Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. This is a webinar about Lyme disease, and we get to talk about Lyme disease, and this webinar is created based on your questions. So the way that you participate is you can listen to the answers that I give and the explanations, or you can actually write a question. And the place to post it is over here, bottom side of the screen. There's a chat box. The only thing I ask is that when you write your question, you do it as a brief question, because this format does not work out well for long questions. And in fact, if they get too long, I won't post them because they actually lock my computer screen up, okay? I can tell you that I already see that we have a lot of questions, and often I'm not able to get to all of them, although I try to work through them as quickly as I can, but I also want to make sure I give good explanations too. So you may see that I can be wordy on some of my responses at times too. If you are participating here and you are not able to get enough of the information or remember enough of what I say, just realize that tomorrow morning I will be sending out an email to everyone announcing that the video recording that we're creating tonight is ready and that you'll be able to listen to that. If for some reason you do not get that email that announces I have the video recording ready, you can actually find the video at a few places. Number one, you can find it at my Lyme disease information site, which is Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD at treatlyme.net. The other possibility is to find it on the front page of my my supplement store, and that is Marty Ross MD supplements at treatlyme.com. Or you can find it at my practice website, which is martyrossmd.com. Okay, so you can find it many places. I plan on having that out to everyone by around 9 to 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is Seattle time tomorrow. And that's if things go okay along with my edit. So for those of you that are new here, I see a number of new names tonight. I'm glad to see you here, and I hope you get some benefit from it. We also have a lot of people participating tonight that have been here before, and I'm glad to see that you keep getting value and that you keep coming back for this. The thing I would request for everyone, the more people that I can reach, or the more people that get help, and you help me with that. So if you want to be part of helping me to help people, please spread the word about what I'm doing here. Share the emails when I send them out, announcing that you can sign up, or even the video for tomorrow. I'd appreciate if you'd help me with that too. Okay, we're all in this together, and I need you to help me spread the word. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So during the webinar, I will, for those of you that are participating in the live version of the webinar, you will actually see the question post on the bottom of your screen. But I'm still going to read it, because in the recorded version of the webinar, that posted question doesn't show up, okay? But for those of you that are listening to the live version, you probably have an easier time following things because you can read the question yourself, even though I'm going to read it for everyone as well, too. Bear with me here a minute, everyone. There we go. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with the first question here. This is from Megan. Hi, Megan. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I follow the IFM's MitoFood plan and consume very few carbohydrates generally. And when I do, they are all complex or low glycemic. However, due to 3 years of herbal and prescription antibiotics, I have significant yeast overgrowth issues. I am taking nystatin and triconazole to try to resolve the yeast issues, but can feel it is still an issue, although improving. In your opinion, would 1 glass of wine, around 5 ounces per month, be contraindicated in the case of yeast overgrowth? While it is obviously not ideal or helpful, it is a source of enjoyment and obviously not consumed in excess. I detox regularly with the far-infrared sauna, as well as daily GI detox and modified citrus pectin binder. I don't find drinking a small amount makes my Lyme or BART symptoms worse. Thank you so much for your honest input. All right. So Megan is treating for too many yeast in her intestines, and that there's a number of ways to do that. But usually I'll combine nystatin along with an azole yeast killer. So itraconazole is an azole. That's why it ends in azole. Another common azole is diflucan, which is also called fluconazole. And typically when you use a nystatin and azole combination, it's going to take about 2 to 3 weeks to start getting your yeast under control. And typically it takes then up to a whole month with one of that kind of combination to treat yeast. Now there's other ways to treat yeast too, but I'm just commenting on that. In terms of treating yeast, the main thing I try to tell people to avoid is taking simple sugars, which Megan, you're doing on the Mito Food Plan, which is a paleo plant-based I should rephrase that. It's a paleo type diet that is heavily plant-based and doesn't use a lot of grains, beans, legumes. And so therefore it tends to be lower carb. You haven't restricted carbs. I don't think you need to restrict more than that. Also, in my experience, most people can still get by with drinking that occasional glass of wine. And if that gives you some enjoyment is good for the soul. And what gives us enjoyment is also good for the immune system at times. That feeling of joy is good for the immune system. So if that's how you get your joy, I have no problem with you having it once a month, even once a week. I don't find that to be something that's really going to definitely block your yeast treatment. Okay. All right. So everyone, when Megan's talking about this IFM Mito Food Plan, is a type of diet that I do have on my website. It is a diet that I recommend as kind of a starting point for a diet because it is plant-based has a lot of plants, I should say, but also relies upon healthy meats and tends to be a type of diet that is not going to feed your yeast because it's lower in simple carbs. And also it's designed to support your energy factories, which are called mitochondria. And often when people have chronic infections like Lyme, their mitochondria may not work as well or may get injured, and therefore they have poor energy generation. So this is a type of diet that supports the healthy functioning of your mitochondria energy factories as well too. I'm going to do a quick screen share to show you some resources here. All right, so this is this is my supplement store. Just so you know, this is a supplement store that I use for supplements with my patients. And if you're looking to find high quality supplements that I trust to work with my patients based upon my own review of what constitutes good quality supplements, anyone can buy from this website. Okay. All right. So this is my Lyme disease information site. This is Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. And so in terms of diet and nutrition recommendations, you can click on the nutrition tab here. And here you'll find my diet called the best brain, inflammation, pain, energy, and detox diet ever. And this is basically is a diet built on the Institute for Functional Medicine Mito Food Plan. You can find all the documents here about how to use that, okay? The other thing, if you're looking for how to treat for too many yeast in the intestines and ways that I recommend to do that, you can take a look at this article here called Kills Yeast, a brief guide that gives you many ideas on how to get rid of yeast, including both prescription and herbal options, okay? All right. Megan, thanks for that question and good luck to you. Hello, Jen. Let's see. Given the effect of disulfiram on dopamine levels in the brain, do you think those who take it should taper off when finished rather than discontinuing abruptly? Thank you. So Jen, yes, disulfiram may being the operative word, influence dopamine levels in the brain. However, when you stop the disulfiram, it still is in your system for a long time. The half-life of disulfiram, the amount of time it takes for half of it to get out of you, is between 60 and 120 hours. And it takes up to 4 half-lives for a drug to completely get out of you, okay? So half-life means the amount of time that it takes for something to go away. So if we look at, let's just say, for the sake of this calculation, we'll say it is 120 hours. One half-life is 120 hours. So 120 times 4 equals 480 hours. divided by 7 equals, well, that didn't go right. Let me do this again. So we got 480 hours divided by 24 equals 20 days. It's almost 3 weeks for this drug to completely get out of you. And as it's completely getting out of you, it's slowly tapering its effect. So by just stopping the medicine, you will have a slow, steady decline because it takes a while for this drug to completely get out of you, up to 20 days. Okay? All right. Thanks for that question, Jen. Hello, JT. Hi, Doc. Do you believe CIRS, which stands for Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome, is a real diagnosis? And are its associated labs helpful in determining if someone has mold toxicity or Lyme? Do you use or ever order any CIRS labs? Do you think any of the CIRS treatment protocol is helpful? And do you use any of it when treating mold, like the Beg spray for Marcons, VIP spray, DDAVP, etc.? So the answer is complicated. So let me talk to you about that. So chronic inflammatory response syndrome is a diagnosis that was developed and coined by a physician named Dr. Richie Shoemaker. And Dr. Shoemaker is a physician that discovered that there are around 25% of all people that when we get exposed to mold toxins in our environment, 25% of us have genetic programming that makes it so that we are not able to remove those mold toxins. So we breathe them in, they get into our bloodstream, and we can't get rid of them, okay? And if those mold toxins stay in our bloodstream, they lead to inflammation and chronic health problems. And it can look almost identical to what Lyme disease does, all right? So here's the common thread between Lyme and mold. So when you have Lyme disease and the immune system is working to get rid of it, some white blood cells will see the germs, and those white blood cells that see germs will manufacture a bunch of chemicals called cytokines. Now, cytokines are good and bad. On the good side, cytokines turn on the immune system to get rid of germs. In a variety of ways, they turn it on. But the immune system doesn't do a good job, and eventually it makes too many cytokines as it keeps trying harder and harder. And too many cytokines give you the symptoms that we call Lyme symptoms. So too many cytokines make it so you can't think, can make you hurt all over, interfere with how your thyroid and adrenal glands function, and sometimes your male hormones and female hormones. Make it so you can't think, disturb your sleep, make you hurt all over, give you severe fatigue, etc. Okay, so all those symptoms that we call Lyme disease symptoms, most of those are excess cytokine symptoms. All right, now, when your immune system sees mold toxins in you and trying to get rid of those, oops, I guess I got something from lunch there still, and trying to get rid of those mold toxins, it also manufactures cytokines. And if it can't get rid of those mold toxins, it keeps trying harder and harder and eventually makes too many cytokines, all right? So both of these conditions, Lyme and mold, can look the same because they both lead to chronic inflammation. Okay, now, the reason that Dr. Shoemaker calls it chronic inflammatory response syndrome is in his protocol. He believes that if you have a genetic predisposition for too much mold, that you should be treated to remove that mold. And if you do not get well by removing the mold, then he believes, and I hope you hear the word I said, believes, that you have a chronic inflammatory response that has been activated from having had that mold toxins in you. And so then what he suggests doing is to do blood testing to see what kind of inflammatory chemicals you might have. And depending on what kind you have, there are steps he would have you take to lower those inflammatory chemicals. What he believes is that having the mold in you may set off an inflammatory cascade that just kind of perpetuates itself, okay? The second step in his protocol after remove mold toxins, if you're not well and you are chronically inflamed, is to test to see if you might have a bacteria growing in your nose called Marcons. And if you do, he believes that that continues the inflammatory response. I think he's flat out wrong. I just believe he's flat out wrong. I have followed his protocol before. I have killed off the marcons in people's noses and have not found it to make any difference when that person has Lyme disease. Okay, now it may make a difference in somebody that doesn't have Lyme disease, but in somebody that has Lyme disease, it doesn't make any difference at all. In fact, if you have Lyme disease and you have mold toxicity, probably the reason that people continue to have a lot of inflammation is because of the Lyme after the mold toxins are out. Dr. Shoemaker ignores that there can be chronic Lyme disease. He does not believe in chronic Lyme disease. And the problem is a lot of the tests he recommends after marcons, the TGF beta 1 he recommends that people get, the MSH levels that he recommends they get, the aldosterone levels he recommends they get, all of those tests that he recommends that people do probably are off, because if you have Lyme, they trigger the same response. So my whole thing about chronic inflammatory response syndrome is it doesn't work in Lyme. That approach doesn't work. Yes, if you have Lyme, I do think you should, and you're not getting well, I think we should look to see if you have mold toxins that are perpetuating your inflammation. But the additional steps he recommends in his protocol, the additional things that are leading to inflammation are probably triggered from Lyme. And that's what we ought to focus on, Lyme, not correcting each one of those inflammatory chemicals as he suggests in his chronic inflammatory response syndrome approach, okay? Finally, about marcons, it's dang near impossible to get rid of. Even Dr. Shoemaker, if you talk to him off record, will basically acknowledge you can't get rid of the stuff. You can use antibiotics, including the bag nose spray, and you can use prescription antibiotics to get rid of it, and you may get rid of it, but it's going to come back. And what my feeling is more and more these days about marcons is I think even though he's identified it in people, it probably is a common bacteria that lives in people and actually does not cause problems, okay? So I don't even bother treating for it anymore. I stopped treating it years ago because I never found any benefit. I also, when people with Lyme, at one time I did try to correct each of the abnormal inflammatory chemicals that Dr. Shoemaker would have us test for. And in a person with Lyme, I never found it beneficial to take those steps, okay? The other thing about Dr. Shoemaker's approach that I strongly disagree with, Dr. Shoemaker is out of date. I mean, I think he was great. I think he did a great job of discovering that there is this thing called mold toxicity syndrome. But he's out of date because he still relies on doing just a genetic profile to see if you might have the problem. But having a genetic profile doesn't mean you have the problem. The science has moved beyond Dr. Shoemaker, and he has yet to follow where the science has gone. And the science now says that we can do more accurate testing to see if you actually have the mold toxins in you, okay? His testing does not actually measure, do you have mold toxins in you? It measures the reaction to mold toxins or to Lyme disease, okay? But a better way to check and see if you have mold toxicity issues is to see, do you have them in you? Have you built up levels of mold toxins in you? And the way to do that is to do a urine test. There's a couple labs out there that do it that I rely on. One is called Real Time Labs out of Texas, and another one out of Kansas called Great Plains Lab, okay? And so the best way to actually see if you have a mold toxins is to see, do you have them in you? Dr. Shoemaker doesn't do any measurements to see they're in you. He's just measuring if you have inflammation and if you have a genetic profile that says you might have a problem. But might having a problem doesn't mean you have a problem. And even if you measure all those inflammatory markers he wants you to measure, it doesn't mean that it's mold causing them. It could be Lyme causing them, okay? Anyhow, I hope that gives you some useful information there. Good luck to you. Hello, Colleen. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I know when treating for mold, we're supposed to avoid taking activated charcoal at the same times as foods with fat. Due to nausea, I've begun eating a bit when I take the pills. how much fat is okay to have with the charcoal, and what exactly happens if you take fat along with the binders? Thank you for caring so much for Lyme patients. Okay, so I guess we're going to have a run on mold toxin questions tonight. Okay, so basically what I want to explain a little bit more about mold toxin illness. So as I said, 25% of people have a problem with mold toxins. So what happens in 75% of people is we breathe in a mold toxin, it gets absorbed into our blood system. And what's supposed to happen is our immune system will see those mold toxins, tag them, and then they get broken down and we poop them out or pee them out in a broken down form. If you are one of the 25%, though, what happens is our immune systems don't tag them. They are a fat-based toxin, and things that are fat-based are supposed to go to the liver. The liver is supposed to process them and transform them from a fat-based toxin into a water-based toxin. They get moved out into our poop, and in a water-based form, they mix in our poop, and we poop them out. Okay, but the liver can't do that. So what happens is the liver passes these mold toxins still in a fat-based form out into the intestines. And in the intestines, they get reabsorbed again back into our bloodstream. So you just get this endless loop that just keeps going around and around that keeps you inflamed, okay? So what we want to do is we want to grab hold of those toxins by binding them up in the intestines so they can't get reabsorbed again. And so that's what the binders do. So for instance, activated charcoal can do that. Cholestyramine, the prescription, can do that. Bentonite clay can do that. Chlorella might do that. There's a whole host of things we can use, and we plan which binders we use based on which toxins are in you, which actual mold toxins are in you based on that urine testing that we do, okay? So the thing about binders, though, is they bind things, okay? They bind fat, too. So an ideal time to take regarding your binders, the way that I recommend using them is to stop all medicines and supplements beginning 30 minutes before you take them. And then you can resume the medicines and supplements 2 hours later, okay? So you don't want to bind up your medicines or your supplements with them. Regarding things that you eat, the ideal time to eat with your binders is about half an hour after you take them. And the reason that's the ideal time is when you eat, it causes your gallbladder, if you have a gallbladder, to contract. And the gallbladder is where the liver stores these toxins it's tried to process, okay? And when that gallbladder contracts, it squeezes these toxins out into the intestines. And you want it to squeeze them out into the intestines at about the same time that the binder is going into that part of the intestines, which happens to be about 30 minutes after you eat, okay? So preferably you can have something to eat, but I would wait until it's about 30 minutes after you've taken your binder, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Colleen, and thank you for that question. Hello, Kara. Let's see. Is frequent, thick, light yellow vaginal discharge and fatigue enough to suggest yeast infection instead of Lyme? Wonder if I should go on antibiotics. So typically a vaginal discharge that is suggestive of yeast is going to be white colored and often will even look like cottage cheese and usually is going to be itchy, all right? Yellow is not typically what a vaginal discharge would look like. And so what I suggest with that is that actually you get an exam. You should have your physician examine you and do a swab of the vaginal discharge and look at it under the microscope. Often things that give you yellow discharge are bacterial infections, and they can be made up of normal bacteria that live in your vagina. That would be called bacterial vaginosis. But there can also be some infectious varieties like a trichomonas, for instance, that can give you yellow discharge too. So your doctor should be able to look at that under the microscope and make a determination for you. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Kara. Hello, JT. Let's see. How do you feel about the newer urine nanotrap test for Lyme? Secondly, do you feel the MRI neuroquant is helpful at all in diagnosis, as chronic inflammatory response syndrome state? It can detect Lyme and mold and even differentiate between the two very clearly on MRI. So the answer about the neuroquant is no, I'm not a big believer in it. And I think as in most of the situations with Dr. Shoemaker, he's overstating various things on that. Okay. So no, I don't use it regularly. And I don't think there's an easy way to distinguish between Lyme and mold toxins. Okay. I just don't think there is. All right. Secondly, the nanotrap, I think, is a useful. So nanotrap test looks to see, do you have parts of Lyme germ in your urine? Okay, so those are called antigens, not antibodies, but literally proteins and parts of the Lyme germ that get into the urine. I think it may be a more useful diagnostic tool in acute Lyme than it is in a chronic Lyme. Okay, all right. Thanks for your question, JT. Hello, Luke. Let's see. Hey, Dr. Ross. I'm IGeneX positive for Lyme band 23 IgM and 18 and 31 IgG. Also diagnosed with Babesia decani. I was bitten in May, symptomatic in September 2019 with lightheadedness, tinnitus, and artificial light overstimulation. Started treatment in February 2020. Did I catch this in time? Also, have you heard tinidazole makes you feel awful the day after you take it? Okay, so first of all, about tinidazole. So tinidazole, everyone, is an antibiotic, and it can be used to treat the cyst form of the Lyme germ. And based on some laboratory experiments from about probably 7 or 8 years ago now, I think it's almost been that long, by Dr. Eva Shoppe out of her Lyme disease research lab out in New Haven, Connecticut, she showed that tinidazole is effective at breaking up biofilms, a slime layer that can cover Lyme germs, about 95% of the time. So if I'm going to use tinidazole, I'm going to use it as a Lyme cyst buster. Again, Lyme germs can live in two forms. They live as a spirochete, that's the corkscrew-looking thing, and Lyme also lives as a microscopic cyst form, and it can morph back and forth between the two. Tinidazole is good for that cyst form of the germ. It's a microscopic cyst form, okay? And tinidazole can be useful at busting up biofilms. And that's why I wind up using it. But tinidazole is an antibiotic that just has a lot of side effects, and often it can make you just feel terrible, especially the day after you take it. I think it's probably a side effect that you're having, okay? So just keep that in mind, okay? There's nothing you can do about it other than just recognizing it's probably a side effect. All right. Let's see. So you were bit in May, symptomatic in September, and started treatment in February. So did you catch this in time? Okay. So the answer is maybe. And I don't mean to sound callous about that. Let me try to explain what I mean by that. Okay. So Lyme is best treated. The best chance you have of getting rid of Lyme is if you start an antibiotic as soon as you get bit. Okay. If you start an antibiotic within the first month after you got treated, according to research that we look at based upon this how successful the Infectious Disease Society of America guidelines are at preventing somebody from getting chronic Lyme, and they recommend anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks of antibiotics with an acute bite and even a bullseye rash. It looks like their recommendations fail about 15 to 20% of the time. In other words, if you get treated right away within that, and probably up to about a month after your bite, and you use the antibiotics for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, treatment fails. People go on and develop chronic symptoms of Lyme anywhere from 15 to 20% of the time. Okay. Now, the longer it is that you wait to get treated after your bite, the greater chances it's going to be harder to get rid of. And based on what I see in my practice is if you wait to up to about a year after you got treated, it may take anywhere from a year to 2 years to completely get rid of the infection, if you can. Okay. All right. Now, a general rule of thumb that I use in my practice is that it's going to take, and this is based on an observation. This is not based on any research. This is just based on an observation that the amount of time that it takes in that first year to treat somebody is based upon how long after your original bite that you start getting treated. And what I see is that it takes on average about 2 months of antibiotics for each month after you had that tick bite. Okay. So 2 months per 1 month. So for instance, if you had started treating this 2 months after your bite in May, it might take 4 months of antibiotics. Okay. That's just a general rule of thumb. Now, can you get rid of it still? Yeah, there's a chance you can. I don't know the success rate. We don't have good information about that, about totally knocking it out. But yeah, you can. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Luke. Hello, Geraldine. Let's see. How serious is the risk of unprotected sex if you are free of symptoms after antibiotic and herbal treatment for Lyme? A married only husband is partner. The answer is I really don't know, because no one has done research on that scenario that is any good. Okay. Let me tell you what we do know. We do know that when a man has Lyme or a woman has Lyme, that based upon 2 different studies, and the trouble is these studies didn't make any differentiation as to whether they had current symptoms or did not have current symptoms, okay? But one study showed that about 50% of the time that men that had Lyme, you could find Lyme living in the male ejaculate, and in that same study, 100% of women that had Lyme, it was found in their vaginal fluid, okay? There was a subsequent study done that asked the same question. In that study, it was found 100% of the time in the male ejaculate and 50% of the time in the female vaginal fluid, okay? Now, keep in mind, finding it in the fluids does not prove that it can be transmitted. It just means it's in the fluids, okay? All right. All right, then, a number of years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a very poor quality study that got a lot of attention. And so if you Google about this, you'll find it. It was a study by, I think, Middleveen and Stricker. Stricker was definitely part of it, that looked at 13 people. Okay, now I just want to say to you, we can never generalize anything based on a study of only 13 people, right? That's not enough of a number of people to really tell what would happen in the whole population. But in this study of 13 people, they looked at women that had Lyme, men that had Lyme, and they looked to see what strain of the germ they had in their ejaculate in the case of a male, and in the vaginal fluid in the case of a female. And in this study that involved 13 people, there were 6 people that were partnered. Okay, so 3 couples, three couples. All right, and so in those couples, the man and the woman had identical strains of Lyme in their body fluids. And so they concluded that it has to be sexually transmitted. And in fact, Stricker went so far and was just so ridiculous. He went on the news and said, we have more to fear in our bedroom than we do in our backyards, which was just totally absurd. And here's why it's absurd. They did not control at all for when the last time the male ejaculated into the female. We do not know when they were measuring something in the female's vaginal fluid, was it Lyme from her that leaked from her blood back into her vagina, or was it a deposit that her male partner had left in her vagina that had not been broken down yet? And keep in mind that just because a male ejaculates into a female and leaves some Lyme in her vagina does not mean it's going to get absorbed into her bloodstream. Doesn't mean it's infectious, okay? So we can't trust that study, but if you're going to, you can read about that study and you're going to see all kinds of stuff that Dr. Stricker said that was just totally ridiculous. But so that has gotten people's attention. Now, what do I see in my practice? I see that about 10 to 20% of couples are in 10 to 20% of couples where both have symptoms that can be suggestive of Lyme. I test them and they both have Lyme. Now, does that mean the couple transmitted it back and forth? Possibly. Or it could be they all got it as independent events, okay? So I think there may be a risk of sexual transmission, but I don't know for sure. Now, after you've been treated, can you transmit Lyme? I think it all depends on whether you got the Lyme completely out of you. I have recently participated in a number of discussions about this with a lot of my Lyme colleagues, and there seems to be some opinion that after you've treated Lyme with antibiotics, if you do not have any remission for about 3 years, that probably means that you nailed every Lyme germ and that you have eradicated it, okay? Now, I got to tell you, that's an opinion. We don't have research to back that up, but there may be a chance that if you have had Lyme, you got treated, and you are symptom-free from having Lyme for 3 years, then you might say that it's eradicated, in which case you might not have any risk of transmitting it. All right, so those are the variables. So a lot of things I can tell you is here. The big answer is I don't actually know. I don't know based upon your question. Okay, all right. Keep in mind too, one other thing. Many of us can get exposed to Lyme and never develop Lyme disease. I want you to hear what I just said. Many of us can get exposed to Lyme, maybe even have Lyme in us and don't develop Lyme disease, because a lot of us have immune systems that can deal with it, either put it under control or knock it out entirely, okay? So even if there is a chance you could transmit it to your husband, it doesn't mean he would get Lyme disease. There's a lot of unknowns here, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Geraldine. Hello, Kelly. Let's say hello, and thanks for all your help. You're welcome. I'm 7 months into treat of Bartonella and suspect I could be dealing with Babesia now. I have noticed I will be doing well most of the month, but then about every 20 days or so, my tongue will turn to that geographic tongue, and I'll feel awful for days. It's a never-ending cycle that can't seem to break. I have just started Melorone, and I'm off rifampin, thinking maybe we need to tackle Babesia. We've also added low-dose naltrexone to see if that helps. Any ideas on what could be triggering this cycle? Yes. So there is a pattern in some people with Lyme that they get worse every 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. And we think it's due to the Lyme infection, actually. Lyme has a replication cycle of about every 4 weeks. And so as the germ starts growing, people tend to get more symptomatic around that time. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. So most of my colleagues and I think that when you get into a cycle of about every 3 to 4 weeks of worsening, that's probably more related to the Lyme germ. Okay? All right. Thanks for that question, Kelly. Good luck to you. Hello, Brandy. Let's see. Any suggestions on what causes peri-oral dermatitis, thick, fast accumulating dandruff? Number 2, hair to stop growing on hands and feet. And 3, people have started, be careful, make certain you can handle glutathione. Or people have stated to be careful, make certain you can handle glutathione. Are there any potential symptoms of supplementing to what you already make? Healing crisis, etc. Okay, so let me try to break apart a few of these. Okay, so regarding glutathione, glutathione is a strong antioxidant that is manufactured in every one of our cells, and it is used inside of our cells to help repair damage. Okay, so it can help heal things. In addition, glutathione is used by the liver to detox things. Okay, all right, now, if you've got a buildup in toxins in you and you start giving more glutathione to the liver, as you start detoxing, that can sometimes trigger a cytokine flare. Remember, I talked about cytokines earlier, being the inflammatory chemicals that are made in excess whenever you have Lyme or when you have mold toxins. And if you have too many cytokines, they give you all your symptoms. Well, if you start detoxing too quickly, you can trigger a huge cytokine reaction, which can make you feel badly. Now, most people that doesn't happen in, but there are occasional people that are very sensitive, it can happen in. So if you do start your glutathione and you get more body pain, more fatigue, more brain dysfunction, etc., it probably means you're detoxing too quickly, and you might want to back down on the dose that you're using of the glutathione. Okay. All right. Let's see. Number 2, what causes hair to stop growing on the hands and feet? The main thing I would do with that is make sure that I would check 2 things. I would check your thyroid levels by measuring something called TSH, T3, T4, and something called reverse T3. In addition, I would make sure you have adequate iron levels. And the way to measure that is to measure something called a ferritin. Okay, ferritin is the way that iron is stored in the body. All right, so check your ferritin levels. Okay, all right. And then finally, any suggestion what causes peri-oral dermatitis? So peri-oral dermatitis, like the cracks that develop right in these areas, can often be yeast related, sometimes can be due to deficiencies of zinc. Okay, so those are the 2 things I think of. And then the dandruff. So dandruff, which is also known as seborrhea dermatitis, you can get it up here in your hair, but you're going to also get it as kind of flakiness rash in these areas, and the nose area here, sometimes back behind the ears, you can get some of it too. That's all called seborrhea dermatitis, also known as dandruff. Sometimes if you have too many yeast growing in your intestines, that creates inflammation in the gut in a way that can exacerbate, make worse your seborrhea dermatitis up here. Okay, so if you've got a lot of active seborrhea dermatitis, and if you're having this peri-oral dermatitis, you might want to do some screening using some of the tools that I suggest to see if you might have too many yeast living in your intestines, triggering these problems. All right, let me show you, do a screen share so you can see the tool that I have for that. All right, so take a look at, this is my yeast chapter again. Okay, so again, you could go up here, you'd click on the yeast chapter here, which will bring up this page. And to see if you have too many yeast in your intestines, take a look at this article called A Silent Problem, Is It Yeast? Okay, and in here I explain the problems with yeast. But one of the things that you can use to figure out if you have too many yeast is a yeast screening questionnaire I have, which is right here. All right. And if you do have too many yeast, you should see an elevated score above about 140 on this. And that can indicate that you have too many yeast. Okay. I also talked with you about just symptoms you would have that can suggest too many yeast as well too. All right. Okay. Let's go back here. All right. So all right. So good luck to you, Brandy. I hope that gives you some help there. Sorry about that. Inadvertently kicked my camera off. All right, let's go on here. Hello, Lynn. Let's see. Any new thoughts around COVID-19 preventative or acute illness protocols? Any new info about predisposition to severe illness with Lyme? All right. Or Lyme headache? I don't know what you mean by hot. I assume you may mean headache. So first of all, I don't have any new ideas about preventive protocols. I've written a whole article about that, and rather than taking time today, I would say that my old recommendations in that article still stand. I'll show you that article here in a minute, okay? In terms of acute illness protocols, I still, based upon my review of the science, think that using Plaquenil trumps medicine, along with Zithromax. I still think there is compelling evidence that says in early COVID-19, right after you get it, not when you're sick enough to be in the hospital, but early COVID-19, that it can limit the course of the illness, okay? The problem is most of the studies that are being done looking at it are on sick, hospitalized patients. So it's the wrong population. It does not appear to help in sick, hospitalized patients, but using it before they get that sick can make a difference. That's still my interpretation of it. All right. One of the things, it should not be surprising, though, that it doesn't work when people get really sick. So a comparison would be for the flu. Many of you may be familiar that we have a prescription antiviral medicine we can use called Tamiflu. But Tamiflu only works well for flu if you start it within the first few days. It does not do anything to help with the flu if you start it after that time period. And that seems to be the case with virus medicines. They're going to tend to work best during the acute phase, except for those antivirals we use for HIV and AIDS, for instance. But for acute viruses like the flu, and probably here in COVID-19, they're going to work better in an acute phase, not after it's gotten all locked into you. Okay? All right. And then the only other treatment that I think has given some benefit is I can never say this one correctly, remdesivir, but it only shortens the duration, and it's an IV medication that is being released on more of an urgent basis for hospitalized patients. And so in that kind of setting, it might make a difference. Beyond that, I don't have any new insights. Okay. All right. Let me do a quick screen share so you can see my article about Lyme prevention, or Lyme and COVID-19, the things you can do about dealing with COVID-19. So let me do a screen share here. All right, so okay, so this is my article, and the last time I updated it was in April, and again, my findings still stand. So it's coronavirus, COVID-19, and Lyme. If you look down here, I talk about things you can do to help deal with it, and one of those is to support the innate immune system, the type of part of the immune system that will deal with this first. And I give various steps that you can use to do that. I also talk about the steps you can take to prevent virus replication, and I describe those here as well too. Okay. And yes, I still consider my recommendations in this article to be current. Good luck to you, Lynn. Hello, Luke. Hey, Dr. Ross. I am IGeneX positive for Lyme band 23. Oops, I think we answered this one earlier. Yeah, we did. Hello, Suzanne. Let's see. Can the heat activate Babesia symptoms of neck pain, shortness of breath, and extreme fatigue? How to treat that has never been treated since 3 years ago Lyme treatment? Which test? So symptoms of Babesia, first of all, so Babesia is a blood parasite that lives inside of your red blood cells. It can be transmitted by tick bites. Okay, so we call it one of the Lyme co-infections. Symptoms that can be suggestive of Babesia are extreme fatigue, air hunger, feeling you can't get enough air in from time to time, night sweats, drenching night sweats. Sometimes people get frontal headaches, or they have a lot of migraine problems with it too. And then people can sometimes get little red little blood hemorrhages underneath their skin that can occur from Babesia as well too. Okay, so if you have a number of those things, it could be Babesia. There are, oh, I'm sorry. The other thing you can get is it can lead to variation in your heart rate. So you might have your heart would speed up periodically and then come crashing down. So you get blood heart or heart rate dysregulation sometimes when you have it as well too. And you can sometimes get very lightheaded when you stand up. Okay. In fact, Babesia can be one of the causes of POTS, and that's postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome that many of you may be familiar with. Babesia and as well as Lyme can be a cause of that. Okay. All right. Now, some of those symptoms may get worse for some people when they are exposed to heat. So the answer is, yeah, it could be. How to treat? So in terms of treating Babesia, the best treatments involve using anti-malaria medicines. My favorite frontline treatment is to use an anti-malaria medicine called Malarone, which has two chemicals in it. One is called atovaquone, and another one called proquinol, which is a quinine derivative. I like having people take one pill twice a day, and I like to combine that with either Biaxin, Zithromax, minocycline, or doxycycline. Okay, there are many other options you have though, and rather than taking the time to go through these, because I have these all explained on my information site, let me show you the article about that. Okay, all right then. About testing for Babesia, we can test for, maybe we can test well for about 2 strains, but we estimate 15 to 20 strains. So we often make decisions to treat Babesia based on the symptoms. Okay, all right. Let me do a quick screen share here. All right, so I'm going to go into my infection treatment plan section here and take a look at this article called Kills Babesia, a brief guide. And in here, I outline numerous options that you have to treat Babesia. That Malarone one that I mentioned is this one right here, okay? In terms of herbal options, my favorite is actually these days is to use this Cryptolepis, which is 5 milliliters 3 times a day. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Lindsay. Let's see. I have been taking full dose of Banderol and Cemento for many months for Lyme. Recently, I have been bit by several new ticks, some producing localized pain and lymph node reactions. Should I do anything different from the protocol that I'm currently on? The answer is yes. So Banderol and Cemento are NutraMedics products. The Banderol generic name is called Atobabark, and the Cemento's generic name is Cat's Claw. Okay, those are effective agents against the Lyme germ. However, they are not effective agents against the other infections you could get from a tick bite. So those other agents would be Anaplasma, something called Ehrlichia. Those are both bacteria. Babesia that we just talked about, and also Bartonella. Okay. In an acute setting, what seems to work best for all of those is a tetracycline, which is doxycycline. So in a situation like this, I usually will add doxycycline 100 milligrams twice a day for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. And that's to pick up those other infections. The lymph nodes suggest to me that something got through. Okay. And so I think the doxy would be a good way to go. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Patty. Hold on here just a minute. Hello, Dr. Ross. Let's see, following up on a question I asked last week concerning muscle wasting. I have experienced extreme weight loss over the course of my illness and 50 pounds without trying, and I'm currently unable to gain weight. What is your opinion which may be causing this? I wonder if malabsorption is the issue. Are there certain markers or tests which would shine some light on this? How might you treat someone who had malabsorption issues? Lastly, do you ever find in your practice eye issues? More common with mold or Lyme. Thanks for what I do. Eye issues like floaters, I tend to find to be more common in Lyme than in mold toxicity. Regarding malabsorption, to see if you're getting enough nutrients, I might do a blood test called a SpectraCell analysis, which looks to see, are you getting enough levels of various micronutrients into the inside of your cells, okay? That's one thing I would do. I would look at that. Additionally, to see if you have malabsorption. If you have malabsorption, we should see that you have unprocessed food getting into your intestines. So stool analysis can look at that. You'd be looking to see, are there meat fibers, are there fat that's getting through. And so I'd like to do a comprehensive GI stool analysis to help look at this as well. And you could either use a Genova diagnostics test to do that, or you could also look at using a comprehensive GI stool analysis by Great Plains, okay? Now, either one of those are going to be looking at a few things. They're going to look to see if you have inflammation in your intestines by measuring a chemical called calprotectin. The other thing they're going to look at is your pancreas working well? And they're going to be measuring something called an elastase, and they're going to be looking at whether you have meat fibers and some other chemicals to see if your pancreas is working well. Because if your pancreas isn't making the type of enzymes you need to digest food, then you're going to have problems too, okay? The other thing that those stool analysis will look at is whether you have a correct amount of healthy bacteria that would be used to do some of the micro digestion of food as well too. So where I would start by looking at somebody with wasting is I would get a SpectraCell analysis. I would also do a comprehensive stool analysis which can help look at, do you have good balance of bacteria to aid in digestion? And is your pancreas working well? And do you have an inflammatory condition of your intestines? And then finally, I don't know, I would need to ask you a lot of other questions to figure out the source of this, but I definitely would want to also, if you have that kind of weight loss, I would be looking at your thyroid. I would be doing kidney liver function testing to make sure that they're working well. And I would be getting blood counts on you as well too. Okay, that's kind of a starting point of where I would look at this. All right. Good luck to you, Patty. Hello, Tracy. Let's see. My college-age daughter finished a 1-year antibiotic treatment for Lyme and Bartonella about a year ago and has been on a supplement regimen for the last year. During this last year, she has not had symptoms that are hallmarks of Lyme or Bartonella, but she has gotten hammered during the last 2 flu seasons with infections that pop up in different forms and are hard to shake. This year, there were 2 respiratory infections which led to conjunctivitis twice, which led to an abscess in her throat, which led to aphthous lesions in her throat and mouth, and a cough that she can't shake after almost 12 weeks. Should we see these as a sign that her immune system continues to be suppressed by Lyme and Bartonella? And another question, do you have any advice about returning to college in the fall with this possible evidence of immune suppression? So this is where it gets tricky. So sometimes when a person has Lyme and Bartonella, their immune system is so suppressed that it cannot react to give you symptoms. All right. So sometimes a sign that the immune system is working well is that you then start having symptoms of the various viral infections that come along because the immune system can react to it now. All right. On the other hand, it could also be a sign your immune system is suppressed. What I would do in a situation like this, when I have this occur in patients of mine, is I like to work with immune stimulators to boost the immune system up to deal with all those repeat virus infections that come along. Okay. And the thing I like to do is to work with reishi mushrooms. Reishi has been shown to help with both innate immune system, which are part of the immune system that will fight viruses you've never seen before, like COVID-19, for instance. But it also turns on a number of antiviral immune cells as well, too. And the way to do that is 400 milligrams twice a day. I'm sorry, 400 milligrams 3 times a day. And that's reishi. It's R-E-I-S-H-I. Sorry about that. Reishi, R-E-I-S-H-I mushrooms. All right. And I would take it probably through the virus season. I would take it. You can even begin now and take it all the way into the spring of next year, for instance. Okay. In addition, I would look at starting something called transfer factor multi-immune. Transfer factors are proteins made by some white blood cells that tell other white blood cells to turn on. Okay. And there happens to be a type of white blood cell that's useful at treating viral infections called natural killer cells, and a transfer factor multi-immune turns them on. That's a product that is manufactured by Research Nutritionals. It's got good evidence that's showing that when you take it, there's a 600% increase in how effective the natural killer cells work. And so that would be 1 pill twice a day. Okay. So those are some things I would do to be on all the time to boost the immune system. In addition, I would also send your daughter to school with something called ProBoost. ProBoost is a protein called thymic protein A. Our thymus gland is an organ that sits here in the chest, okay? And it makes this protein called thymic protein A that acutely turns on the antiviral system. And the way you use that is at the first signs there's a virus coming on, a person puts 1 packet under their tongue and repeats it every 2 hours to take a total of 3 packages the first day. And on the second day, you take an additional 3 packages, but you spread them out every 8 hours. So on day 2, you would take 1 packet under the tongue, let it dissolve there 3 times, but have them be at least 8 hours apart each time. Okay. And that can acutely turn on your antiviral immune system too. Okay. All right. Let me just do a quick screen share here. I want to show you where you can read more about this. And also I'll show you where the products are as well too. So let's do this. All right. So in terms of how do you boost the immune system when you have problems with virus infections? There's one place you could look to see what I've written here. Take a look at this article called How to Boost the Immune System in Lyme. It includes some practical steps like dealing with emotional toxins that can suppress the immune system. So do things to relax, lowering cytokines, and then there gives you supplements that you can do, like the thymic protein A, like the transfer factors that I just talked about, and like the reishi mushrooms that I was just talking about too. Okay, all right. All right. Then in terms of where to get these, so here at my supplement store, take a look. You can just, the product I recommend for reishi is this product called reishi. This is manufactured by a company called Mushroom Science. They're out of Oregon. They make a really good product. So I'd take a look at that. And then the ProBoost product I was talking about is here. I still showing the 12 packets. They only manufacture it as 30 packets now. And then finally, the transfer factor multi-immune. Is this product here by Research Nutritionals. Okay. All right. All right. Good luck to you. Good luck to your daughter, that is. Let's see here. Hello, Jen. Let's see. How accurate is the spinal tap for diagnostic neuroborreliosis? What are the diagnostic criteria? So it's interesting. We can have people that have solid clinical evidence of neuroborreliosis and have solid blood testing showing it's there, but the spinal tap misses it. We think that the spinal tap is effective at diagnosing Lyme about 50% of the time. It's not that useful, okay? So making a diagnosis of neuroborreliosis is based on clinically what's happening. All right? And thanks for the question. Good luck to you. All right, let's see here. Hello, Kelly. Let's see. I've been battling Bartonella, but nothing Babesia. Let's see, has now reared its ugly head. So you're treating Bartonella, but now you think Babesia is giving you problems. We tried artemisinin to see if I would react, and I sure did Herx. Do you think, like some of the other main LMDs, that Babesia is kind of the gatekeeper, so to speak? You have to get rid of that to fully recover from any other infection. So what I see is that if you have a co-infection like Bartonella or like Babesia and you do not treat them, then it's going to be difficult to get over Lyme. So both Bartonella and Babesia can be gatekeepers, if you want to call it that. My own practice is if I've got somebody with Bartonella and Babesia, I tend to go with Bartonella treatment and Lyme treatment first at the same time simultaneously. And as we clear the Bartonella, I will then add treatment in for Babesia. The reason I do it in that order is based on the observations of Burrascano. Many of you may know the name Dr. Burrascano. Burrascano was one of the Lyme pioneers out in New York State that kind of pioneered chronic Lyme disease treatment. And he observed in his practice that if he had somebody with Babesia and Bartonella and he did not get the Bartonella out first, if he treated Babesia before getting the Bartonella out, it became very difficult to get rid of the Bartonella. Okay. All right. So anyhow, that's how I approach it as well too. All right. Good luck to you. Let's see here. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Hi, Doc Marty. When one has mold toxins in their body, can they take zinc, and is a special diet necessary? Do you hear of cystis T for overall health and Lyme fighting? Will EBV and mycoplasma levels, which were sky high, go back to normal once Lyme in remission? Okay. So when you talk about EBV and mycoplasma levels, I think what you mean is antibodies. We have the ability to measure the antibodies against those infections. And I think there's a lot of confusion about antibodies. Some of my colleagues assume that if you're having a strong antibody reaction, that must mean those germs have become very active. And they have no proof of that. There has never been a study done that proves that those germs are more active when you make more antibodies. In fact, you could make another argument, which is, gosh, your immune system is really healthy and it's able to make all those antibodies as a means of helping you to cohabitate with these viruses. So I am not a big believer in treating for those infections based upon elevated antibody levels. The other thing I'd say about both of those infections is they're common in healthy people. I could pull 100 healthy people off the street and I would find evidence in about 10 to 20% of having elevated antibodies against Epstein-Barr and mycoplasma. Just having elevated antibodies does not prove they are active. Again, it may prove that you have a healthy immune system that's doing its job and keeping those germs under control. Okay. So I don't necessarily test to see if they go back to normal. I don't even know if they will. And to me, it doesn't matter because whether you have markedly elevated antibodies or not does not prove that you have an active infection. Okay. All right. Cystis tea for overall health and Lyme fighting. I haven't used it, so I can't make any comment about that. And then when one has mold toxins in their body, can they take zinc? So yeah, you can take zinc with mold toxins in you. And no, I don't think a special diet is necessary. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Lisa. Hello, Barbara. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have questions about taking the herbs Otoba and cat's claw. Do you take them with food or on an empty stomach? Take in the morning or at night? I have been taking them for 4 days and they are making me very sleepy, sleeping 6 hours at night and 5 hours in the day. Is this normal? So, first of all, I have people take them twice a day, in the morning and at nighttime. Okay. Um, Anywhere from about 8 to 12 hours apart is what I suggest on that. As many of you know, Otoba and cat's claw are my favorite way of herbally treating Lyme. And I started using those years ago based upon some Petri dish experiments published by Eva Choppy in her Lyme disease research lab in New Haven, Connecticut, that showed that these two used together do a massive kill of all forms of the Lyme germ, and in addition, remove 100% of biofilm. That's why I like using them, okay? And I found that clinically in my practice, they worked about 85 to 90% of the time when I put people on them, which is the same chance I think that prescription antibiotics have of working for somebody as well, too. So I use them interchangeably with prescription treatments, basically, okay? And then in terms of the ideal way to take them, the ideal way to take them would be on an empty stomach, all right? But that's ideal. Sometimes people cannot take them that way and do need to take them with food. If you take them on an empty stomach, that's going to make it increase the chances for absorption. Okay, and so by an empty stomach, I mean take them up until about a half hour before you eat. Do not take them within that half-hour window before you eat, and do not take them within 2 hours of eating. That's what I mean by on an empty stomach. Okay. Now, in terms of being sleepy, that is not a common effect. Now, sometimes you can get increased sleepiness if you're having a Herxheimer reaction from taking them. And again, a Herxheimer reaction is the reaction you get from killing Lyme germs, all right? And when we get a Herxheimer reaction, what happens is as you start killing Lyme germs with prescription or herbal antibiotics, you start releasing dead bug parts. The immune system sees those dead bug parts and reacts by making more inflammation cytokines. Remember, I talked about cytokines earlier tonight. And one effect of increased cytokines is sleepiness. In addition, increased cytokines can make you hurt, make it so you have a harder time thinking, give you lower energy, okay? I have never seen anyone have just sleepiness alone. If it's a Herxheimer reaction, usually they're going to have some of those other symptoms I just talked about. If you are just having increased sleepiness, it may be that you're having some kind of an atypical side effect, okay? So there is a Marty Ross rule in medicine, which is anything can happen to anyone with anything, all right? Which means we have common side effects, but every one of us is a unique laboratory. And there are things that happen to us when we take medicines or supplements that don't happen to most people, but happen to us. So if you are having just sleepiness alone, what I would suggest doing is don't assume that sleepiness alone is a Herxheimer reaction. What I would see is to see if it is a side effect of one of these herbs is I would stop both of them and try one at a time and see, does that one give you sleepiness? If it does, stop it and then try the other one and see if that one gives you sleepiness. In other words, test to see, is the herb actually giving you sleepiness, okay? All right. Good luck to you, and thank you for that question. Hello, Judy. Let's see. I wrote in last week that my husband has heavy metal toxicity. We were going to use EDTA, but decided to use Metapol instead. He has aluminum, selenium, and manganese. Any suggestions as to the protocol with Metapol? No, although I carry that product because I carry all the research nutritionalist products, it's not one that I work with to do heavy metal detox. Okay, so I don't have a specific protocol on that one. All right. Thank you for that question, though. Good luck. Hello, Kay. Let's see. I was sexually assaulted early in life and tested negative for Lyme and co-infections, yet unwittingly transmitted Lyme to my husband, who tested very highly positive for Lyme and co-infections. Is this because I have been infected for decades and he for much less time? I recently tested negative for syphilis, the great imitator. Is my negative test a result of Lyme syphilis in latent tertiary phase? Is there a more accurate syphilis test other than the RPR with reflex to Quant from Quest? Is there a better lab for me to submit to? So in terms of syphilis testing, that RPR with reflex that you talk about is a good test, okay? I would trust that. You probably don't have syphilis, okay? In terms of why let me read this again here. Oh, you think you have symptoms of syphilis. That testing is a very accurate test. I doubt that you have syphilis just based on that, okay? In terms of your husband, it's possible your husband got this separate from you. 50% of the time that somebody has Lyme, they don't remember a tick bite. So that means 50% of people out there may have gotten Lyme from baby ticks, which are nymphs, for instance, that are so small you can barely see them, the size of a poppy seed. We may also have other vectors that spread Lyme. So for instance, there's European studies that show that mites, flies, mosquitoes, and fleas carry Lyme. Now, that doesn't prove they transmit, but you got to wonder, when you only have 50% of people have chronic Lyme that remember a tick bite, you got to wonder, are there other vectors spreading it? Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Kay. Good luck to your husband. Hello, Kelly. Can a vaginal bacterial infection be a first sign of Lyme disease? That is not my experience. All right. Good luck to you, Kelly. Hello, Santiago. Let's see. I'm positive for Babesia and BART. Was doing good, but 6 weeks after treatment, I stayed feeling bad and started being allergic to every pill and losing weight. I started diflucan, but I'm super reactive to it with palpitations and confusion. I'm having a lot of muscle twitches and weight loss. Could it be just in your experience? Does it happen to be the case? Santiago, that's a lot of stuff going on that I would need to ask you a lot of questions to kind of get to the bottom of it. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give you an answer here. I would be glad to help you look at that. You may want to take a look at my online consult option. Let me just do a quick screen share to show you that, okay? But I need to ask you a lot of questions that I obviously can't do in this kind of a format. So let me do a quick screen share here. All right, everyone. So this is my clinic website, Marty Ross MD Healing Arts. And there are two general kind of appointments that I offer. And you find them on this appointments tab. One of them is a full medical service visit. This is where I actually can prescribe. Another one is where I just give you an opinion, but I don't assume you're prescribing. For the full medical service visits, I do eventually need to see you in office. Before COVID-19, you could only do a full medical service if you first saw me for an in-office visit. But since COVID-19 up through the end of June, I allow people to be seen doing telemedicine. But once the disease rates for COVID-19 decrease, beginning probably in July, I will require your first follow-up visit be an in-office visit here in Seattle. The limited consult service visit is one where I don't require that I see you in office, but I cannot prescribe as part of the limited consult service, okay? But I can give you a good opinion. You can read about both of these visit options down here. Here's where I describe how a limited consult service visit works, and here is how I describe how the full medical service visit works, okay? If one of these interests you, you can book that appointment by clicking on the Book Now button here, all right? All right. Good luck to you, Santiago. Bear with me, everyone. I've got some questions that are not giving me enough information here. Okay, let's see about this one. Hello, Bet. Let's see. I have had Lyme for 3 decades. I was bitten in 1987 and had a rash. I went 3 years with no treatment, and over the years, I had 2 periods of being symptom-free. I have found an antihistamine diet to be very helpful. Currently, I am... see if I can follow and see if there's any other part to that. I don't see anything else there. All right. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to answer that because I don't have a whole question here. Hello, Elise. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Is there any evidence of boron helping with inflammation? I am not aware of boron helping with inflammation. I just don't know. I don't know. I have never looked into that before. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Delfino. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Ross. Is it possible to have sinus infection without nose discharge? Thank you. Yes, it is. So there's, we have many sets of sinuses. There's a set of sinuses under here, under these bones, another set directly here, and then there's 2 sets of deeper ones that are behind the front ones that are about here and back here. Sometimes the deeper sets of sinuses will get infected, and they have so much swelling and inflammation that it blocks the flow out of the sinuses, so you don't get any discharge. It just sits in there packed up, for instance. The best way to tell if you have a sinus infection that's not of a non-draining type is to get a CAT scan X-ray of the sinuses, and we can tell by looking at that in terms of whether you got stuff in your sinuses or not, and how it looks in the sinuses as to whether you might have a bacterial sinus infection. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Michael. Let's see. How does one choose between antibiotic versus herbal treatments for Lyme? Is combining the 2 approaches a good strategy? If we want to avoid upsetting our gut microbiome, shouldn't herbs be the first choice, or do they affect the gut similarly? Many things. Okay. So for the Lyme germ, as I mentioned earlier, my favorite 2 herbs are to use a combination of Atoba and cat's claw. Those 2 herbs work about 85 to 90% of the time. And I find they are have the same chance of being effective as prescription antibiotics. Okay, that's for the Lyme germ. When it comes to Bartonella, if you happen to have that, for Bartonella, the herbal options of Sida acuta and Houttenia, which I think are the best herbal antibiotics, work about 75 to 80% of the time, versus prescription antibiotics for Bartonella work about 80 to 85% of the time. For Babesia, Prescription antibiotic regimens work about 85% of the time, and herbal regimens work about 80% of the time. Okay, so to summarize, if you have just Lyme germ, you can treat the Lyme, you have as great of a chance of helping Lyme germ with an herbal protocol as you do with prescriptions. But for Bartonella and Babesia, there is a slight chance of having better outcome by using prescription rather than herbal regimens. Okay, so that's one part of the equation. You have to weigh that out against, though, what happens with the gut microbiome. And the microbiome being the good bacteria, parasite, yeast, etc., that live in your intestines, right? Prescription antimicrobials do a greater destruction of the healthy microbiome than using herbal antibiotics and herbal anti-germs, okay? So those are the things to consider. And it's all personal preference. A lot of people in my practice will choose herbal over prescription because they want to protect that gut microbiome. But I think you have to make it with the idea in mind of, you have to consider what are the chances of the herbs being effective. So in each of my articles about how to treat Lyme with antibiotics, how to treat Babesia with antibiotics, and how to treat Bartonella with antibiotics, I give you the odds discussion that I just had. You can find it in each of those articles, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Michael. All right, everyone. That's it for me for tonight. This is the last webinar for a couple of weeks. I'm not going to have one next week. I'm going to take that week off from the webinar, and then I'll resume again and 2 Thursdays from now, okay? And tomorrow morning, you will get an email from me explaining that the recording for tonight's webinar is ready to be viewed. And in addition, in that email, I'll have links that you can sign up for the next set of 3 webinars, which will occur beginning 2 Thursdays from now. Okay? All right. I've had a good time visiting with you all tonight. I hope everyone got some good advice and some things that can help improve your treatment. Again, for all of you that have participated, if you get benefit out of this, please share it so that I can help other people as well too. Let other people you know that have Lyme know about these webinars and the benefit you're getting out of it. Help me to reach more people. Okay? All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And good night, everyone.